Welcome, dear listener, to a world far beyond our reach, hidden beyond lakes and shadowed forests, where ancient mountains stand like quiet sentinels, crowned with secrets and silent songs. Tonight, let us journey together, following a young prince named Elian as he ventures into the heart of these mysterious peaks, drawn by whispers only he can hear. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the story carry you, like a gentle breeze through the mountains. Tonight, our journey begins. There was a kingdom, far from the clutches of cartographers and common folk, nestled amid silent lakes and shadowed forests. And at the edges of this kingdom, looming like ancient guardians, rose the singing mountains, tall, watchful, and crowned with secrets. Few dared to venture near, for it was said the mountains held voices of their own, ancient songs woven through the stone, singing of things lost and forgotten. Most dismissed these tales as nonsense, idle chatter of old men and superstitious women. But not the young prince, Elian. Since he was child, Elian had been entranced by these mysterious mountains. He could sense even then that there was something just beyond his reach, something that whispered to him from afar. When the wind shifted, he'd strain to listen, hoping for even the faintest note of those rumored melodies. His heart beat faster. His mind caught in dreams he could neither name nor explain. The court advisors found this fascination troubling, a mark of childish fancy in an heir who needed to know strategy, not legend. But Elian did not forget. He knew somehow that the mountains hid a truth he was meant to uncover. The years passed, and Elian's curiosity grew sharper, like a blade honing in silence. Then one spring night, on the cusp of his 21st year, he felt the pull again, strong and unrelenting, tugging him toward the horizon. A voice, soft as smoke, seemed to call his name, summoning him to the mountains with a promise of revelations. Elian could wait no longer. He dressed in a plain traveling cloak, left his princely garb behind, and set out alone under the cover of darkness. He slipped past the sleeping city, his heart thundering with a strange, insistent longing, and made his way toward the towering shadows of the singing peaks. The journey was long and perilous, the terrain growing wilder as he left the familiar paths behind. Dense forests gave way to craggy cliffs, and rivers ran cold and swift, their currents treacherous and deep. But Elian pressed on, each step guided by that invisible hand, leading him closer to the hidden world he could almost feel waiting beyond the mist. After 3 days and nights, he reached the foot of the mountains, where silence reigned as thick as the shadows themselves. Here, the air held a different weight, heavy with a stillness that seemed almost alive. Elian took a deep breath, feeling the chill settle over him like a second skin. The silence around him was thick and undisturbed, And yet, yes, he was certain of it now. A faint, otherworldly hum drifted from somewhere above. A tremor of awe and trepidation rippled through him. The song was real, like the first sigh of an ancient memory, hidden beneath centuries of stone. As he climbed higher, his path winding through jagged rocks and moss-laden boulders, the sound grew clearer, as if each step peeled away layers of reality, revealing the world as it once was. The music was no ordinary sound. It was rich, vast, and echoing, woven through with notes that seemed to hold sorrow, wonder, and hope. Elian moved in a trance, his senses keen and hyper-aware, each stone and tree root beneath his feet feeling as alive as he was. At twilight, he reached a narrow ridge that jutted out like an ancient stairway, leading to a hidden valley bathed in the silver light of a rising moon. There, nestled among the mountains, was a valley he had never seen, a place of eerie beauty, untouched and forgotten. The silence here was different. It was not emptiness but anticipation. And then, as if in response to his arrival, the mountains began to sing in earnest, their voices rising like a choir from the depths of time. The song echoed and reverberated, filling the valley, drawing Elian into a melody that stirred his soul and unlocked long-forgotten emotions. Each note seemed to reach for something beyond words, a language of sorrow and joy that he could almost understand. Elian closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him, feeling as if he was standing on the edge of a vast, unfathomable mystery. The song enveloped him, filled him, and at that moment, he knew these mountains held more than sound. They held memory. They held lives. They held the weight of a forgotten world, a kingdom hidden in silence, waiting for the one who would hear their call. He had come this far, but the journey had only begun. The songs of the mountains had brought him here, and now it was his task to unlock the secrets buried within them. The mountains loomed spectral in the moonlight, their shapes both foreign and familiar, as if they had always waited for him in secret. Elian stood on the edge of the hidden valley, his heart a steady drumbeat in the quiet. He had heard the songs, yes, but he was unprepared for what he felt now. Alone before the echoing call of something vast and incomprehensible. The silence stretched before him thick and humming, as if the very air awaited his next move. Then faintly, like the murmur of a dream, the song began again. It was unlike any music he had heard before, neither melody nor harmony as he understood them. The notes rose and fell like a living creature breathing in the night, their cadences wrapping around him, whispering secrets he could almost grasp. The sound ebbed and flowed, taking on form and shape, transforming the darkness into something sacred, alive. Elian could feel it in his bones, the thrumming pulse of the mountain's voice, speaking in fragments of something beautiful and broken. Drawn deeper, he ventured into the valley, his footsteps hesitant but unwavering. As he moved, the song grew clearer, more defined, and the notes twisted and wove around him, filling the air with a language too ancient for his ears but familiar to his heart. It was the music of memory, the sound of time unspooling, of stories layered in stone. And amid the echoes, Elian heard something strange, a voice woven into the mountain song calling him forward. Elian! It was a whisper, soft and fleeting, disappearing before he could be sure he'd heard it. His heart clenched, for this voice did not belong to any living soul. It felt like a memory speaking to him, a voice that had lingered in the mountain silence for centuries, waiting for him alone. He could feel it as surely as he felt his own breath. The mountains were reaching out, calling him by name, inviting him into their ancient tale. And Elian knew somehow that his journey was now intertwined with their story, bound to the hidden secrets of this forgotten realm. The path wound higher, his steps trailing over moss-covered stones and thick roots that twisted like veins beneath the earth. The moon's silver light lit his way, casting eerie shadows that danced at the edge of his vision. The song grew louder, enveloping him, and he felt himself slipping into its cadence, his heart aligning with its rhythm. It was as if he were becoming a part of the song itself, a single note amid 1,000 voices calling out across the ages. Then, as he rounded a bend, he saw it. A cavern opening in the side of the mountain, shrouded in shadows and pulsing with a strange golden light. Elian hesitated, the air around him thick with anticipation. The song grew softer, almost a whisper, urging him forward, yet keeping him on edge, as if challenging him to uncover what lay within. With a deep breath, he stepped inside. The cavern was cool, the walls slick with moisture and covered in faint, glowing patterns. The symbols seemed to move, shifting and changing with the play of shadows, as if they were alive, watching him, studying him. And from somewhere deeper within the cave, the voice called again, unmistakable this time, a name, a plea, an invitation. Elian, you have come at last. The words were ancient, their syllables wrapped in a melancholy that pierced his heart. He followed the voice deeper, compelled by something beyond curiosity, something primal that thrummed within him. This was no ordinary call. It was a summons, a binding of soul to song. He knew that to answer it was to cross a threshold he could never return from. And yet, he could not resist. In the heart of the cavern, he came upon a small shimmering pool. Its surface was perfectly still, mirroring the light of the cavern walls, casting a soft, ethereal glow. Elian knelt before it, staring into the depths, feeling the weight of ages pressing down upon him. The song echoed around him, but this time it felt different, closer, as if the mountains themselves had drawn nearer, enfolding him in their ancient embrace. And then, as he gazed into the water, he saw them figures, shadows of faces and forms long past, flickering just beneath the surface. They were beautiful, ethereal beings, their eyes wide and sorrowful, bound to the earth and sky, yet lost in a timeless slumber. Elian's heart ached with a sorrow that was not his own, a longing to release them from their imprisonment, to answer the call that echoed through their voiceless cries. He reached a hand toward the water, feeling a pull like gravity, a force that bound him to this place, this song, these souls. He understood now, in some deep and wordless way. The mountain's song was a lament, a call for release, an unending plea from a kingdom that had been buried in silence and song. These souls were waiting, bound by a vow unbroken, and Elian knew he was the one who could break it. The air in the cavern grew still, as if the very mountains were holding their breath, waiting for Elian's next move. He pulled his hand back from the pool, the vision of the lost souls lingering in his mind, their faces etched in sorrow, bound to the stones and shadows. The song of the mountains seemed to swirl around him, each note weighted with centuries of longing, an unanswered call echoing in the silence of the peaks. Elian could feel the weight of their gaze upon him, their silent plea woven into the music that filled the cave. And as he listened, the song grew sharper, like a blade cutting through fog, forming words, not in a language he could speak, but in images, in sensations that played upon his mind. He began to see flashes of a kingdom, once vibrant and alive, a world woven with enchantment and harmony, a kingdom that had lived as one with the mountain's voice. He saw glimmering towers and halls carved from the mountain's heart, their walls shimmering with the same light that now danced on the cavern walls. There were people, graceful and serene, their lives entwined with the music that rose from the earth itself, a melody that bound them to one another and to the world they inhabited. This was a kingdom that did not merely exist in the mountains. It was the mountains. And Elian realized, with a chill that seeped into his bones, that he was standing within the remains of a realm that had not truly vanished, but had simply been sealed away, buried in the notes of a song no one else could hear. The vision shifted, darkened. He saw the kingdom in its final hours, its people bound by a curse that took root in silence and shadow, a betrayal written in the stones and echoed through the ages. Their voices had been stilled, their song turned to lament, binding them to the mountains forever. They had fallen, not in battle or bloodshed, but in a pact broken, a promise shattered. The weight of that broken vow lay heavy upon the peaks. Their melodies turned to haunting cries, reaching out to anyone who would listen. Elian sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the knowledge that flooded his senses, the memories that coursed through him like a river of sorrow. The lost kingdom had waited, tethered to this place, unable to break free. They had called to him a prince of another land, for he was of their bloodline, descended from those who had once ruled in harmony with the mountains. He understood then why he alone had heard the song, why he alone had been summoned to this hidden valley. He was meant to be here. He was their last hope. In the dim light, Elian traced his hand over the glowing symbols on the walls, feeling a connection as ancient as the stones themselves. These symbols were not merely decorations. They were verses of a song, pieces of a spell, fragments of the vow that had bound his ancestors to the mountains, and in breaking had trapped their kingdom in silence. Each symbol pulsed with a faint warmth beneath his fingertips, as if the stone were alive, resonating with his presence. He began to hum, softly at first, letting his voice blend with the mountain song. The melodies seemed to rise in response, meeting his notes, weaving through his voice as if recognizing him, acknowledging his presence. And as he sang, the air around him shimmered, the walls vibrating with the song that flowed through him. Each note was a memory, each word a fragment of truth that had been buried in silence. The voices of the mountains grew louder, filling the cavern until it felt as if he were surrounded by a chorus of souls, each one a note in a symphony of longing. With each verse, the images returned, clearer this time. The faces of the kingdom's people, eyes wide and hopeful, their spirits reaching toward him, toward freedom. Elian could feel their gratitude, their trust, their plea for release. He was not merely a prince. He was a part of this ancient lineage, the final thread in a tapestry that had been woven long before he was born. Then the song shifted, deepened, revealing a single, sorrowful refrain that struck him to the core. It was the song of the king himself, the last ruler of the hidden kingdom. His voice echoed in Elian's mind, filled with regret and longing, asking for forgiveness, seeking the mending of a vow he could no longer uphold. The king's voice faded, but the words lingered. Only a heart that knows both sorrow and joy can lift the curse. Elian knew what he must do. He had to finish the song, to sing the melody that had been left incomplete, the song that would bring peace to the kingdom and release the souls bound within the mountains. But he sensed there was a cost, a price to pay for their freedom, something he could not yet see, but that pulsed just beyond his reach. As he rose, the mountain's song quieted, as if awaiting his choice. Elian took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his task settle over him like a cloak. He knew now that this was his fate, his purpose. He would sing the final verse. He would bring an end to the song's sorrow, and in doing so, he would learn the true cost of breaking the curse that had held this kingdom in silence for centuries. The cavern was still, filled with a silence as fragile as glass, waiting for Elian to make his choice. He stood before the glowing symbols on the walls, each one a fragment of the broken vow that had held the kingdom captive. The weight of the mountains pressed down upon him, heavy with centuries of sorrow and hope, waiting for him to restore what had been lost. He knew that to sing this song was to bind himself to the fate of this place, to become one with the mountains and the voices they held. Elian took a steadying breath, feeling the melody swirl around him, beckoning him to join. He closed his eyes, letting the haunting refrain fill his mind, becoming part of his very pulse. His voice trembled at first, unsteady, as he began to sing. The song poured from him, soft as the rustle of leaves, delicate as the first light of dawn. The ancient words rolled off his tongue, carrying the weight of a language he had never learned yet somehow understood. As he sang, the air around him shifted, shimmering with a strange golden light. The walls of the cavern seemed to breathe, pulsing with each note, and the voices of the mountains rose to meet him, a chorus of longing and lament, harmonizing with his own. Elian could feel the souls of the forgotten kingdom awakening, their spirits stirring as if from a long dreamless slumber. The song grew in strength, his voice intertwining with the echoes of those who had come before him, the kings and queens, the shepherds and artisans, the children and elders, all who had once lived in the hidden kingdom. Each note called them closer, drawing them out from the depths of the mountains of silence, unraveling the curse that had bound them. They gathered around him, invisible but palpable, their presence warm and sorrowful, each one lending their voice to the song that would break their chains. Elian's heart ached with the weight of their memories, their lives flowing through him in a torrent of images. Children running through fields of wildflowers, artisans shaping stone into intricate patterns, lovers parting beneath starlit skies, their whispers carried by the mountain breeze. He saw the final moments of their kingdom, when the curse had taken hold, shrouding their world in silence, turning their lives into echoes that would last an eternity. And amid the visions, he saw the face of the king, eyes dark with sorrow, voice rich and resonant as he joined in the song. His spirit, like a shadow cast across time, stood beside Elian, his gaze full of a deep, aching regret. The king had been the one to shatter the vow, to break the harmony that bound his people to the mountains. And now he was bound here, waiting for one who could forgive and release him, who could sing the final verse he had never dared to utter. Elian could feel the king's plea, the sorrow that had lingered through centuries, and he knew the final verse was meant for him to sing alone. He took a deep breath, letting the music rise within him, filling him with both sorrow and joy, with forgiveness and remembrance. His voice wavered, but he sang with all his heart, each note a promise, each word a vow renewed. The song built to a crescendo, a powerful, resonant cry that filled the cavern, spilling out into the valley and across the mountains. The very stones seemed to tremble, the earth itself responding to the song that was finally, truly complete. The golden light grew brighter, flooding the cavern and illuminating the souls that surrounded him. Their faces filled with wonder and peace, their eyes reflecting the freedom they had awaited for so long. As the last note faded, a deep, resounding silence fell, and for a heartbeat, all was still. Then, with a shuddering sigh, the mountains exhaled, as if they too had been released from the weight of ages. The glow softened, and Elian felt a warm breeze pass over him, carrying with it the final whispers of the Lost Kingdom's people. They were free, their spirits lifted, their voices fading into the stars above, returning to a realm beyond sight and sound. The curse had been broken, the vow restored, and the hidden kingdom had found its peace. Elian knelt, overwhelmed, his heart both empty and full, the echoes of the song lingering in his mind. He felt as if he had left a part of himself within the mountains, a piece of his soul bound to their ancient stones, forever entwined with the voices he had freed. He had sung the song of the forgotten kingdom, restored their memory, and given them the release they had so longed for. The cavern grew dim as the golden light faded, leaving only silence, a silence that was no longer heavy with sorrow, but serene, filled with the quiet peace of an ending fulfilled. Elian rose, the air around him lighter, the weight on his shoulders lifted. The mountains were silent now, their voices at rest, their song complete. And as he made his way back through the valley, he felt a deep sense of kinship with this hidden world, a bond that would remain with him always. He had answered their call, he had sung their song, and in doing so, he had become a part of the mountains themselves. As Elian emerged from the depths of the cavern, the world around him was transformed. The dawn was breaking, soft tendrils of light reaching over the peaks. And for the first time, the mountains stood quiet and still, their echoes resting. There was a profound calm that settled over the valley, a silence that felt like the closing of a sacred book. Yet as he gazed across the landscape, he realized that something was stirring, a presence as ancient as the mountains themselves, awakening from its slumber. The light of dawn grew stronger, illuminating the valley and the cliffs, which seemed to shimmer as if touched by an ethereal hand. Shapes and forms began to emerge, as though the mountains were giving birth to something hidden within their bones. At first, Elian thought it was a trick of the light, but as the morning mist lifted, he saw it clearly, the hidden kingdom, unfurling like a flower from the earth. Ruins that had once been hidden by shadows took shape, the remnants of towers and arches shimmering as if carved from moonlight. Bridges spanned the cliffs, delicate as spider silk, and pathways wove through the rocks, leading to places long forgotten. It was as if the mountains themselves were peeling back layers of time, revealing the kingdom in all its former beauty, a world suspended between memory and reality. The song had freed the spirits, but it had also awoken the land, calling forth the very heart of the lost realm. Elian moved through the ancient city, his footsteps echoing in the stillness, feeling as though he were walking within a dream. The people of the hidden kingdom may have passed beyond this world, but their memory lingered, woven into the stones and pathways, preserved like leaves, pressed between the pages of a long-lost story. He could feel their presence, not as shadows or spirits, but as a warmth, a breath of life that permeated the air. As he walked, a deep sense of familiarity washed over him. He felt as though he had always known this place, as if he had lived here in another life, wandering these same streets, marveling at these same towers. He reached a broad terrace carved into the mountainside, and there, stretching out before him, was a view of the kingdom that took his breath away. The valley was alive with golden light, the peaks gilded by the dawn, and in that moment, Elian felt the heartbeat of the land itself, a steady ancient pulse, filling him with a quiet reverence. And then, as the first rays of sunlight touched the highest peak, he heard it, a faint, distant melody, like the last echo of a dream. The song rose softly, filling the valley with a music that was both familiar and new, like a refrain from his childhood, a melody he had always known but never truly heard. It was the song of the land itself, the song of the mountains, no longer a lament, but a hymn of rebirth. The kingdom was alive again, not in the bodies of those who had once lived here, but in the stones and sky, in the rivers that flowed through the valley, and in the very air he breathed. Elian stood on the terrace, feeling his heart beat in harmony with the land, understanding now that he was not simply a visitor to this realm. He was a part of it, bound by blood and song. He was the last prince of the hidden kingdom, the one who had answered the call, who had sung the final verse, restoring the land to its rightful place in the world. And though he would return to his own kingdom, he knew that a piece of his soul would remain here, entwined with the mountains, a part of the song that would echo through eternity. He lingered there as the day began, watching as the light spread across the valley, touching every stone and shadow, filling the land with warmth. He knew that the world outside would never see this place as he did now. They would look upon the mountains and see only rocks and mist. But he knew the truth. He had seen the heart of the hidden kingdom, heard its song, and felt the life that pulsed within it. As he turned to leave, he whispered a quiet farewell, a promise to remember, to keep the song alive within him. The mountains stood silent and solemn, their voices at peace, their story complete. And as Elian descended the winding path, leaving the hidden kingdom behind, he felt a new strength within him, a deep and quiet understanding that he carried something far greater than the crown he would one day wear. He carried the memory of a world long lost, a world he had helped awaken. When he returned to his own kingdom, he was no longer the prince who had left in silence. He was changed, touched by something ancient and timeless.